What's up, traders? Hope you guys are doing well. Bam, bam, bam goes the market. All right, guys, bit of a market update time and all the indices. Before I start this video, guys, do not place a trade based on this monkey's videos because I have no idea what I'm talking about. Cancel, close the video down right now. Guys, don't place a trade based on this video, okay? It's trading is a lot more than just a 5-minute video. But this is just a quick market update to share with you what I'm seeing in the markets, okay? So trading involves risk at every single time, and you just never know which trade is going to work out. And that's the part of all trading, right? So let's get straight into it. Guys, links in the description. You want some free education, coaching, or you want one-on-one coaching with me? Then you can book a coaching call with me if you'd like this monkey's help. Let's get straight into the markets and see what's actually going on here. So big jump up, right? Big jump up in the markets today. Really, really interesting. I have been saying for the last few days that the Dow Jones has been a lot weaker, and this actually bears in mind that I actually thought we're going to get a drop down. That's the reason why, guys, you never trade on what you think, because I never traded short there, I never traded anything here. I just let the market do its thing. But the thing is this, guys, is that it's interesting here, right? That I actually thought that the Dow Jones were telling us that we're likely to get a bit of a drop down. Because it was showing a lot more weak now. And then I was also saying the S&P and also the Nasdaq is a lot stronger now. Really interesting thing that's happened right now is, as you can see this triangle pattern here, right? And you can see we're actually starting to break out of this triangle pattern right now. So is this an actual breakaway gap? It's really interesting. We created this big gap here, right? So this is this gap here. Is that a breakaway gap? Did we just go through a bit of a short-term resting phase before we have another big run? Interesting, right, guys? It'll be really interesting to see what actually happens over the next couple of days, whether we do follow through. If we do follow through, then that was a breakaway gap. Yeah, it's just really, really, really interesting. Now, if you're looking at this here, let me actually just delete everything off the screen now. I'm going to delete all the trend lines off the screen here for a minute here. I'm going to look at the actual price action for what it is. Let me actually go back to this chart here. And I want to just bring up this blank chart here. So I want to share with you what I see here. So first thing, guys, what we're starting to see here is we're definitely seeing a bit of a resistance line through there, as you can see, and we definitely did have that. That sort of resistance there. So we have been trending up, and the main thing I want to talk about this here, guys, is that I actually thought the Dow Jones was getting a lot weaker, so I actually thought that may be telling us a sign. But remember, guys, if you go back to some of my videos, the most important thing you want to do, right? You never ever want to trade against with who's in control, right? So that's the reason why I've never said go short, but it was just and yesterday's video was like, which way is it going to go? So we got a nice jump up today in the markets. If you have a look at the weekly chart as well, you can see what the weekly chart looks like. It looks like the weekly chart is actually trying to break out. So are we getting ready for another run? Are we getting ready for another big run in the markets? It's really, really interesting to see what's actually happening here on the S&P 500 chart. Sorry, on the Dow Jones chart. If we go actually have a look at, say, the S&P 500, look at the S&P 500, look at that big gap up. Is that a breakaway gap or what? That's actually a pretty big gap. And most gaps, guys, if you do get a big gap up like that, the last few times that's actually happened, every time we get a big gap like this, guys, it actually gets filled. And you can see today, actually, even though we actually had a big gap up, look at the volume today. It wasn't really big, was it? It wasn't like a real big volume. It was just sort of just average, wasn't it? So I'm not too quite sure about that, guys. It's really, really interesting to see that there. Now, once again, guys, you can see that we still are making these major higher lows, right? So the buyers are still in control. So you never want to trade against that. But when you're looking at these markets through here, and you're looking at what's actually happened here, the last few times we've actually had a gap. You see this here was a gap, and look what actually happened a couple of days later. We had a big gap up, and then a few small bars and dropped down. Now, depending on what's happened here, we actually have this big gap here, and the last time that was the gap there, we actually had a gap here, right? And actually went for a run for a while, and then eventually came down and closed that gap right there, as you can see. So whenever we do get a big gap, it does get filled, but depending on what we actually do from now, if we continue to have another nice move to the high side, that tells me this is a breakaway gap, and we're likely to go for another big run. It's just that's what the market's showing me. But if we get this sort of action where we're just getting some small little doji bars and stuff like that, not much follow through, then I believe we actually could get like another big down bar, something like that. But right now, guys, high, low, now breaking above these highs through here. The S&P has now just closed at its highest it has done all year. So the S&P has just now created an all-time new high in that as well too. Looking onto the weekly chart, once again, guys, you can see that the market's making high lows, high lows, high lows, high lows, and that's the reason why, guys, I've been saying the Dow Jones looks like the Dow Jones is saying that we are getting a lot weaker. I'm not sure whether that's actually telling us something or not, but looking at the S&P 500, we actually can see, and I said the S&P 500 and both the Nasdaq. If I go to the Nasdaq now, both the Nasdaq actually show a bullish movement, right? The Nasdaq really didn't do much. It had a bit of a gap up, but really didn't do much with the Nasdaq. But we're getting a lot of bullish movement out there. So it's really, really, really interesting just to see what's actually happening here, guys. That's the Dow Jones. Let's go back to the S&P. This is the S&P here. We're really, really interesting to see what's actually going on through there, guys. And every single time we do get a big gap like that, a big gap up, as you can see, this was another one here. This was a big gap up. It actually eventually comes down and gets filled. So I'm not sure what the gap is all about with that there, guys. Is it a breakaway gap? Generally, a breakaway gap happens at the start of a move. So whether this is the start of a move or not, that's yet to be seen. Once again, guys, no matter what I think, that's why I've never gone short the actual the S&P 500 itself. I'm obviously right now I'm actually short two different stocks. And it's really interesting. The Dow Jones and S&P went through the roof, but my stocks really just basically went sideways. So really interesting through that. Now, guys, once again, even though you think that the market might be starting to roll over and we may be topping out, you don't ever want to assume anything. And once again, guys, you always want to make sure you're trading with that trend. If you look at that weekly chart, guys, if you look at that weekly chart and you're seeing major higher lows. High, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low. So who's in control? Buyers, right? So the buyers are still in control. So you never ever want to trade against that. Sometimes the charts can give us a bit of an early warning signal of the market dropping down. That does not mean you trade against it, right? So you always want to trade. You always want to make sure you're trading with that trend. And if you're not sure about anything, you just want to trade with the trend. And if there's no bullish setup, if in this setup here, then you simply just don't take any trades like that. Make sense, guys? So anyway, guys, that's a little market update for me, as you can see with the Nasdaq as well too, and what's actually going on through there. If you go back and have a look at, say, you can see you actually look at the transportation averages moving higher. You can see actually interesting. We actually got a nice gap up as well too on the IW. And also the IWM also has had a bit of a gap up as well too. The VIX has actually started to drop back down. Yeah, so really not much going on through there. So there we go, guys. It'd be really interesting to see whether we do get a bit of follow through on the Dow Jones tomorrow or not. The Dow Jones had a really good volume behind it as well too. So whether we do get a follow through tomorrow, guys, or this was just a gap up and a bit of a small down day, and then it closed back below, that's yet to be seen. So there we go, guys. Bit of a market update time.